It's my daily rant, of course. The next subject for today, which is 28th of November 2025, is forced adoptions. Yeah, it's a bit of an emotive subject for me, and I can probably explain a little bit later. But yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube. It'd be perfect if you could. And if you're listening from somewhere else, it's at My Daily Rant UK on YouTube. That'd be perfect if you could join in. So yeah, my emotive subject today, I really do get emotional on this one because it's something that's close to my heart anyway. Parents threatened and blamed by authorities as 1,000 adopted children are returned to care. It's a personal story in one of the newspapers, and I'll read. Variety's breaking point with her adopted son Liam came after she had already been threatened with knives and arrested by police following untrue allegations. Now, this has something in common, all these stories. Untrue allegations. Her husband Ian recounts that she said at one point to a social worker, "What if we can't just do this anymore?" Which is fair enough. Most people say that. He says the social worker's reply came without a moment's notice or hesitation. Well, you'll be prosecuted for child abandonment. And this is an adopted parent at this case. Verity and Ian are just two of 50 parents this report had spoken to during a 6-month investigation into why adopted families are being broken apart from their children and returning to the care system. It has uncovered a hidden world where parents are subjected to lies and blame by authorities across the UK. As they struggle with the needs of traumatised children who have often suffered abuse and neglect before they're removed from the birth families. I'll tell you more about the birth families later. Parents speak of being threatened, harassed, and parents pushed into mental health crisis. While one adopted teenager who returned to care says that with more support, his family might still be together now. Yeah, I think that's the word as well, in brackets, support. The news here conducted the most extensive freedom of information request ever into adoptions that are broken down, finding that more than 1,000 adopted children in the UK have returned to care in the past 5 years. That's 2020 to 2025. That's a very high figure. Than the figure in the recent government report, but the true number is very much bigger than that. Yeah. So that's adopted parents having problems. 1,000 adoptive parents or more have been returned to social work care. Now, on the back of this report, there's a commenting person. So they commented. And I think I'm going to read this out to you as well. The UK pretty much only permits adoption up until the age of 6, which I find to be a ridiculous requirement. So many children are not in a position nor ready to be adopted at that age. So that bit I don't get, because the UK pretty much only permits adoption up until the age of 6. Get that bit? Which this person finds to be a ridiculous requirement. Okay. But this bit, so many children are not in a position nor ready to be adopted by that age. Does that mean they need to be adopted later? After they're traumatized? Because, they've known their parents longer, do they need to be more traumatized for them to fit in the adoption system? I don't know what this lady's trying to say. Please let your mind boggle with that and leave your comments down below in YouTube, please, or any other social media platform. They should open it up and put the decision back into the children's hands. Now, that's a good idea. And give them the power, whether it's 6+, and decide if they want or not want to be adopted. Yeah, that'd be good. Then they can be placed with families open for adoption or begin meeting prospective families. The rush to be adopted by the age of 6 is not a good system. Very true. It certainly doesn't help that far too many adoptive parents are twisted and hoping adopting will heal their trauma, which is usually infertility. On top of this, many wanted to just adopt little babies like a blank slate. So yeah, you don't adopt because you've got a problem with your fertility. You don't adopt because that suits you and your bloody lifestyle. There's also a huge lack of support for adoptive families. Yeah, well, there's not a lot of support either for the biological families. They have unique needs and complications that require a lot of community support. Yeah, so do we, the biological families. Anyway, we're talking about the adoptive families. Then there are the original families, which, yeah, I've just mentioned. I advise anyone to see how dangerous, unhinged and scary families can be when they have had their children removed. You can see groups on Facebook, she says, called Social Workers Exposed, Forced Adoptions. Every town in this country, Peterborough, London, Forced Adoption Activists on Facebook, and all these little ones, yeah? Forced Adoptions Edinburgh and so on. And they're threatening, with personal information of social workers. Well, I don't agree to, break the law, but, if they've done wrong, why not publish their details? But in a nice, calm, constructive way that, you did wrong, what are you going to do about it? Rather than, you don't do nothing naughty to them. Of course, some are perhaps innocent, and there are innocent biological families, and they didn't deserve to have their children taken away. However, if they're able to maintain contact with the children prior to their adoption, they can really get their heads and turn those children toxic. Well, no, they don't turn the children toxic deliberately. The biological parents, when they go into care and they're going to be adopted, they do it because they're traumatized. And the biological parents haven't had a chance to recover from that traumatization, which I'll explain a little bit later on. And it says basically from start to finish and beyond, it's a cycle of misery and toxic born from the trauma and pain that begins. It's a sad state of affairs. Like everyone, the birth parents, social workers, the adoptees, the adoptive parents are constantly at war with each other, rereading and worth editing that the adoptees are not sharing equal blame as they deserve no blame or fault at all. They never ask for any of it, especially when they are still a minor. Yeah, well, I kind of agree a little bit with that last bit. I mean, nobody wants nobody wants any of that, do they? But and then, of course, Hundreds of thousands of unmarried women were forced to give up their babies for adoption, and they should receive a government apology. Well, I don't know if they've had the apology by now, but fucking hell, pardon my language. Why shouldn't you have apologised by now? This is my daily rant, and I may say the odd swear word, and I shouldn't. I did say it was an emotive subject. The inquiry by the Joint Committee on Human Rights was set up following a series of reports by news channels. 185,000 women in 50s, 60s and 70s were shamed and coerced into giving up their babies. And ever since then, of course, you've had the natural forced adoptions by birth parents. So they started off in the early 50s, 60s and 70s, taking babies away from mothers that weren't married, didn't have a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And now they're still doing it. Forced adoption around the world is happening because governments don't care. People are too traumatized and too weak. I mean, one guy I've met many times, forcedadoption.com. Forcedadoption.com. He's got a couple of books. Ian Joseph, an amazing guy. He sums it up. He's an ex-county councillor from Kent in England. A lady came to him one day saying, look, I've got problems. Can you help me? They sacked him because he's trying to help people. And he's saying, and this is true, it's a punishment without a crime. Babies taken at birth for risk of emotional abuse. How can you predict that you're going to harm your child in the future? If you're harming him now or her, lose your children, go to jail, you deserve it. But how can you predict in a crystal ball is a future risk of emotional harm? Toddlers taken at 6 a.m. by squads of ununiformed police and social workers for risks that may never happen. Whether those who predict the future use tarot cards, crystal balls or tea leaves is immaterial, because the fact is that parents lose their child to care for risk of events that may never happen, but according to government stats, are far more likely to happen under state care. So not the birth parents. These children would be damaged in state care than from loving imperfect parents. No parent is perfect, but they try their best. And a lot of reports that I can't tell you right now because it's on the internet anyway. Sue Reed is one of them from the Daily Mail of 10, 15 years ago, reported that children are better off in an imperfect family situation than being in care. And of course, it's the family courts that make most of this real. And they shouldn't do, because, they listen to the liars. They're not bothered about what the parents are saying. By the time the parents get to speak, it's actually over for them. So the nightmare begins when social workers act like a second police force, punishing parents who have not committed any crime. They do this by obtaining an emergency care order in the parents' absence often. They take away the children in foster care. They claim these children have suffered emotional harm, or worse, still at risk of it in the future. On this basis, an order is nearly always granted without permission. It's disgusting. Of course, the kangaroo courts, yeah. And the legal aid lawyers, known in the trade as professional losers, usually advise clients to listen to the social workers. If that rings a bell anywhere, yeah. And then there was this, what do they know requests? Yeah, they wanted to know, do social workers conceal child abuse, telling children that their parents don't love or want them, telling children their parents are dead, removing children from parents on false allegations, not believing children when they disclose abuse. Yeah, because a lot of children in care, even nowadays, they get sexually assaulted or raped by a professional or a carer, and everyone looks the other way. Bloody hell, pardon my language. Stop parents seeking medical advice to bring attention. You know, like Munchans, there's no people, maybe warriors, but they're not doing it deliberately. They may go to hospital, they may go to doctor for medication for reasons they don't understand. You know, why is my child being bruised? You know all this already. The shaken baby syndrome, all this stuff. Now, this is all this stuff is a link between social workers, police, and the courts trying to take children away because, as Maggie Tuttle said many years ago, from children screaming to be heard, it's a multi-million-pound industry, and it really is. I could go on this subject a lot more, and I invite you to email me freedomtalkradio2013@gmail.com. I really do urge you to email me, Andy, and I just want you to share your story, and we'll get your word out there on the internet, on YouTube Live at the moment, on Twitter, X, on Facebook, on Riverside FM. I love you guys. Please support the channel on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell, like, share, comment, and of course, have a good day for now. Oh yeah, I was going to say, and of course, you know, I read every comment that you provide. Yeah.